Welcome to Family Law Talk. Family Law Talk. Presented by Kirk Stange of Stange Law Firm, PC. Stange Law Firm is a multi-state family law firm. Now, here's your host, Kirk Stange.
Welcome to Family Law Talk. We have an interesting topic today. The topic is, how does co-parent counseling work? And this episode today is based on an article on our blog, familylawheadquarters.com, dated October 12, 2025. And the title of the article is The Scoop on Co-Parent Counseling. So as a follow-up to the episode today, going over to familylawheadquarters.com and read this article for more information. But let's go ahead and jump on in. The reality is that co-parent counseling is a popular trend in divorce and family law matters. In some cases, the parties might agree to go to co-parenting counseling together on their own accord in order to try to communicate better with one another. In a lot of cases, this isn't the situation, but what ends up happening is the court or the guardian ad litem recommend co-parent counseling. In some cases, they might even do an order for co-parent counseling, which orders the parties to engage in it in meaningful attempts to try to communicate better. All right? The idea behind co-parent counseling is that it can enhance the communication skills of parties that are divorcing or separating. And then the hope is that by communicating more effectively, then the parties will be able to work together in a more amicable manner for the best interest of their kids, right? And so lots of parties, when going through these cases, can be adversarial, they can be upset with one another, there can be hard feelings. But the idea is that if parties are able to work together in a cordial manner, then this will be good for the parties, this will be good for the kids, and hopefully this will result in less repeat litigation and really an amicable resolution to disputes that might take place, all right? So in hearing this, many wonder, well, what does this look like and how does this work, okay? Obviously, co-parent counseling can be different based on the co-parent counselor and based on the facts, but in a general sense, what happens is the co-parent counselor will meet each party alone for a certain number of sessions, get to know each of the parties individually, try to find out who they are, what they're about, and what their communication styles are, and then, what are the differences between the parties, okay? So typically the co-parent counselor will meet each of the parties separately for a while, and then ultimately we'll bring the parties together into joint sessions. I mean, this is normally the case, and the joint sessions could be in person. In the day and age of virtual meetings, it could be via Zoom, something like that, where the parties are not in the same room. But the idea is the therapist then works with the parties on how to communicate better, okay? And so the sessions can be quite a bit different based on the parties and the circumstances and the communication that takes place between the parties. Sometimes communication might be more free-flowing with the therapist sort of sitting back and letting the communication happen, and they offer suggestions. In other cases where maybe it's adversarial or maybe there's a lot of hard feelings, the therapist might have to regulate the conversation much more in a structured manner. All right. Therapist also might ask the parties to do some work between the sessions, okay? And this could really entail a lot of stuff, from reading books, reading literature, to maybe writing things down for the next meetings, or homework of things to think about coming into the next sessions, okay? This can, again, look very different based on the parties, how they communicate, what the differences are, and what the backgrounds are, all right? And again, the hope is that by doing this, parties are able to co-parent better. They're able to get along in a way that is at least cordial and that is at least amicable, and that this can result in the parties settling their issues outside of the court system, all right? So this is the hope. This is the aspiration. One of the other questions parties have is, well, how long does a co-parent counseling continue? This is going to vary based on the facts too, but sometimes co-parent counseling can be for many, many months, maybe even longer. Sometimes co-parenting counseling could be for a shorter duration of time where the parties are able to get on the same page a lot quicker, okay? For some parties, they might be in some form of co-parenting counseling until the kids are emancipated, theoretically, all right? So this can vary a whole lot. Okay. Another question parties have is, does co-parenting counseling always work? And the answer to that question is no, it doesn't always work. In some parties, tempers can flare. People can get angry with each other, right? And in these kinds of cases, co-parenting counseling can be quite difficult. So there can be circumstances where the parties try co-parenting counseling and one or both parties back out of it and don't want to do it anymore. There could be a situation where the co-parent counselor recommends that the parties not do it any longer if it's not going well. Other cases where co-parenting counseling can be quite difficult, and I think a lot of attorneys would say it's not advisable, is in cases where there's been some significant domestic violence, right? Where there's been domestic violence of a significant nature, it can be very difficult for this to work, and it could be harmful on the party who's been abused to want to participate in the co-parenting counseling as well. Okay, so no, co-parenting counseling doesn't always work, and so then a lot of parties ask, well, is it worth trying? And the question to that, or the answer to that question, is a little bit complicated. Obviously, there's never any guarantees in terms of co-parenting counseling, never any guarantees. Sometimes co-parenting counseling can truly work, but it ultimately entails both parties wanting it to work, both parties being willing to bury the hatchet with one another and co-parent and compromise, okay? So that is very, very important. But for a lot of parties, yes, it's worth the attempt at least, and parties ought to try it in a meaningful manner. But in some circumstances where one party doesn't want to bury the hatchet, or one party wants to threaten litigation repeatedly if they don't get their way, or where one party is committed significant acts of domestic violence upon somebody, then maybe it's not worth the effort in these circumstances. And I think with the domestic violence, I think a lot of attorneys would say, yeah, probably a bad idea to do this, particularly in person, where there could be concerns with people coming in and out of the sessions together. That would have to be via Zoom or something like that if it were even to happen, okay? Other circumstances where co-parenting counseling can be difficult, where one or both of the parties have significant mental illness or personality disorders, or where somebody's very high conflict and not acting rationally, this can be very difficult, and there can not be a great likelihood of this succeeding, okay? So to really kind of sum this up, look, a lot of courts, guardian ad litems, are fond of co-parenting counseling. They're fond of parties at least trying it. So in a lot of cases, the parties should probably at least try it, should attempt it. All right, some parties have success with co-parenting counseling, so it can work at times. All right, in cases where both parties want it to work and they want things to get better, there can definitely be a positive impact. And there can be a situation where parties are at least able to be cordial with one another, civil with one another, and that can be extremely helpful, all right? In other circumstances, it might not work, and it might not be worth the effort where there, again, been domestic violence, a lot of mental illness, or where one party's not really willing to move on and is always threatening litigation if they don't get their way. In these kinds of circumstances, very challenging to see it work. But look, I wanted to at least cover this topic and bring it up. This is very common, the idea of co-parenting counseling. It's really gaining prominence, more and more people trying it, so I thought it was an important topic to cover here today. So again, as a follow-up to the episode, going over to familylawheadquarters.com, read the article titled "The Scoop on Co-Parent Counseling." This will give you more information on this topic. But thanks for tuning in today. Stay tuned for our next episode of Family Law Talk coming up. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Family Law Talk with Kirk Stange. Visit StangeLawFirm.com for more about today's topic, or to put Stange Law Firm to work for your family today. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely on advertisements. Neither the Supreme Court of Missouri or Illinois reviews or approves certifying organizations or specialist designations. The information you obtained in this podcast is not, nor is it intended to be, legal advice. You should consult an attorney for advice regarding your individual situation. We invite you to contact us and welcome your calls, letters, and electronic mail. Contacting us does not create an attorney-client relationship. Please do not send any confidential information to us until such time as an attorney-client relationship has been established. Past results afford no guarantee of future results, and every case is different and must be judged on its own merits. Kirk Stange is responsible for the content. Headquarters, Office 120 South Central Avenue, Suite 450, Clayton, Missouri 63105. Kirk Stange is licensed in Missouri, Illinois, and Kansas.